Good afternoon, everyone. We hope you are enjoying a private well conference on the first day. My name is Sallie Dolan, and I work with the private well class at the Illinois State Water Survey. So Steve is our supervisor. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about our Onsite tool, because all of us know that a lot of well owners also have septic systems, and as the regulators and the people in the industry who go out and talk to these people, it's always good to also have some information for septic systems as well as wells, because they expect you to know everything whenever you're out there.
So my name is Erin Huggett. So I also work with Steve Wilson and Sallie. But today, we're really going to go over the on-site wastewater treatment system assessment tool. So basically, you can see here on the left, it's a fillable PDF, and you can use it basically to determine vulnerabilities with your system in the field. And so you can find it at our website, privatewellclass.org. And basically today we're just going to go through it. We're going to go through the assessment system, and we're going to highlight actually 2 case studies to see how you can use this PDF in the field. All right, so first and foremost, so the privatewellclass.org is a collaboration between the Rural Community Assistance Partnership and the University of Illinois, with funding from the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, RCAP, as well as the US EPA. Cindy Brooks will actually go over the regions a little bit more during her talk, so I'm just going to touch on it a little briefly. You can tell that there are 6 regions across the United States. Currently, we are in the Great Lakes Community Action Partnership. So that's pretty much all I'll touch on about RCAP, just because I know Cindy's got a good presentation coming up.
To find our assessment tools, we have both a private well assessment tool and an on-site tool. You can go to our website, privatewellclass.org, and on our resource library, you can drop down to assessment tools. And again, those are downloadable PDFs where you can fill it out on your laptop or a phone, or you can print it off and take the paperwork with you. Those tools are divided up into 14 sections. So it covers everything from homeowner information to the location of the system, to the landscape, the geology, and then it also has where you can do recommendations and do a drawing if one doesn't already exist.
So here we have our 2 systems. For clarity, the system on the left I will be calling System A. I will also be highlighting it in blue. And then for System B on the right, I will be highlighting in green. So these are just kind of a way to get familiar with the 2 different systems that we're going to be comparing.
So one of the first things that we do when we go out to do an assessment is we want to find as much information out before we step foot on the property. So the first thing that I did with System A is I contacted the health department. And this particular health department was able to get me not only this permit, but they just sent me the whole neighborhood to make sure I had the right one. And in Illinois, our permits are pretty extensive, so I get a lot of information off of this one document from the health department. And then in this particular instance, they also included a drawing. So while it's missing some of the measurements I would like to normally see, it is clear, and when we went out to the site, it was easy to find the system and know where everything was located at.
And then for System B, unfortunately, those files were not on file with the health department. So we got in contact with them, tried to see if there was any information that they had at all. They didn't have any plans, no files, no permits. So a lot of this information is missing from our assessment. And that's just kind of something that you're gonna have to, you might run into in the field. And you just kind of have to keep going, and you can do some further investigation and do some historical imagery background information as well, which we'll actually get into.
So again, before you go to the site, the more you know, the better. So we do recommend that you look at like something like Google Earth and find an overview of the site. So you can see on System A, we found the imagery and we've labeled the different parts of the septic system. So when we go out there, we know where we're looking for, and it's also a reference for the homeowner to look back on. In this particular case, there was historical flooding, so we also included the historical flooding so we could determine if that would be an issue when we got out and looked at the septic system or not.
So when comparing the two systems, again, Sallie said that the blue area is a historical flood zone. In System B, there's not a historical flood zone, but there is a creek nearby, and it is within a wooded area. So those types of things are things to keep in mind, understanding what kind of drainage you'll have in a wooded area versus a flood zone.
So going back to the assessment tool, my screen here is cut off a little. So you can see that you have the fillable PDF. And since I had the permit, I was able to fill a lot of this information out. So you can find out who the owner was whenever it was installed and enter that. And then I also had information like who installed the system that we were able to put.
Whereas for System B, again, no permits. So we didn't have a permit number, didn't have a date of issuing that permit. And we also have no information on the installer contractor or any information on when it was actually installed. So even though there is some missing information in this section, you do still want to go through the homeowner and talk with them about, things like water use, how many people are in the house, how many loads of laundry do you do a day or a week, or that sort of thing, just so you can kind of get an understanding of how much the system is being used.
So these are our two systems. We chose these two to highlight today because they are both actually ATUs, or aerobic treatment units. So they're kind of same, but they're also very different. So you can see in System A, the system is all right in a row, and it's all very compact and very easy to identify where everything is.
Whereas for System B, you can see that this is actually the only visible part of the system in this area. So we have here the manhole port and the fake rock, which houses the alarm system and the air pump, which we'll get into. But you actually have to go pretty far away from this area to get to the chlorinator and to get to the rest of the cleanout port and the drainage. So it's a little bit different. It's not so compact as you see in System A. And again, going back to Section 3, that's where you could put in your health department information. So I was able to enter that information. And then Sections 4 and 5, 4 just goes over water usage, so you can talk a little bit to the homeowner about how they're using the water. And then Section 5 goes over the landscape properties. So again, this was where I entered in that information about the historical flood area. And for System B, again, we don't have that agency just because, we didn't have the permit, so there isn't an agency on file. And then when we get into the landscaping, like I said before, it is in a wooded area. There's no real historical flooding in the area, but there is a creek close to the drainage area, so that is an environmentally area of concern, basically. Okay.
So this is me at System A. I've actually been to the home twice, once to do the actual assessment. The second time was just for training. When we went out the first time, we couldn't find the discharge because Creeping Charlie had kind of crawled and covered it up. So that's me digging out the Creeping Charlie, trying to find the discharge. And so it was a good point where we could talk to the homeowner then and explain about keeping the system cleared out like that. And so they could keep an eye on it and make sure it didn't get damaged.
And for system B, you can see that it is a very wooded area, so you can kind of gauge by that as far as, the soils and that sort of thing, which we'll get into. But what we are actually all looking at in that top right picture is the drainage pipe. So both of these systems actually drain to the surface. The system B actually drains underneath actually a wood pile near a fire pit. Kind of an interesting drainage point, but that's what you get with a system that kind of is in this type of situation.
For System A, the homeowner actually works for the Illinois State Natural History Survey. And so when she found out that this water was going to drain onto their property, she spoke to different people in their wetland section, and she got native wetland plants for Illinois and planted that in the area. So it's great to keep the grandkids out of the area, great to keep the pets out of the area, but then it also keeps the water from stagnating and going septic because those plants are doing their job, and it's made this nice little ecosystem that's growing in their yard and really helps with the system.
So I'll let you go.
So with the state of Illinois, we do require that anyone who wants to install a septic system has to get a soil classification, which has to be done by a soil classifier. They no longer allow for percolation test. So it was very interesting because from the health department, I received the whole neighborhood, and only the ones that had a conventional system did they keep the soil classification in the file. So for this particular system, since it had an ATU, there was no soil classification. So you just have to assume that they installed it because of either the soil types, it is on a slope, so it doesn't allow for the traditional system, but we don't have that information to go off of. So if they would want to replace it, we're gonna have to have them do a soil classification again to be able to upgrade their system.
And for section 6 for system B, there was no soil classification on file. Again, the health department had no information. So you can kind of assume a little bit using your geology background, if you have that, based on the woodland landscape, what type of soil is in the area, and this is likely why the ATU was chosen for this area.
So then we move on to section 7, and this goes over the actual system itself. With the system A, it was a new build, so the house was built in 2003, so this was the original septic system that went with it. So we know when the house was built, we know when the system was put in, and so we had all that information at hand.
Mm-hmm. Whereas for system B, so the home was actually built around 1910. It's actually a historic schoolhouse. So since there were no plans, we don't know when this septic system was installed. We have estimated around 2014, but do we actually know that? We don't. We basically know that is, it could have been as late as 2014. So the way we figure that out is actually using historical imagery. And so there was this area in the yard that basically has a chicken coop and a chicken run. And the ATU drainage system actually goes straight through the run, straight underneath it. So we were thinking it could be a possibility of maybe like they wanted to just build a drain or a ditch and put that PVC through there and not have to tear down the run to construct that drainage. Now I will show you what we did to find out. So we have the question, which came first, the chicken or the septic? So we can see here, and wow, it's really hard to see on these big screens, but if you look, you can see there's an arrow in each image pointing to a little white dot. There's actually 2 little white dots, so if you think you see it, you probably do. So that's actually the chlorinator and the clean out port. And so for 2023, you can see that it is pointing to that chlorinator, and you can see that there is a run there. I've highlighted that in green. 2020, 2020, there's also a chlorinator there, and there is the run highlighted in green as well. So we decided to go back a little bit further, and we got to 2017. You can clearly see the run is there. It's actually a better historical imagery than 2020, but so the chlorinator's there, the run is there, and then we get to 2014. The chlorinator and the cleanout port are both there. However, there's no chicken coop, so we can safely determine that the septic actually came first in 2014. Now, this is the earliest we can determine that the septic was installed, was there already, because before 2014, the imagery gets really, really bad. It's a wooded area, so you can't actually really see a lot of the yard. So that's why we came up with the decision to say roughly 2014 or before 2014.
So going back to the tool, we go to section 8, which goes over the actual septic tank. So again, mine was easy. I had that permit from the health department, so we know what kind of tank it was. We know when it was installed. We know who installed it. So that part was easy. But when we went out and talked to the homeowner, they were very concerned because they thought that their tank was filling up too quickly because that's what the tech had told them. So I said that I went back a second time for a training, so I talked to the homeowner a little bit more, and she said, we have a 6-month contract. So I requested that the owner of the company come out and inspect my system to see what's going on because the tech didn't know what was going on. Well, it turned out that the septic business owner got a good lesson in making sure your techs are informed before they go out. He just had never done an ATU inspection before and didn't know what to say, so he kind of made up an answer. And so it was good that they had the 6-month contract because they did get another input and it kept them on target and their system's running beautifully. They don't have any issues or anything like that.
Yes. And so for System B, we kind of had a similar idea. We basically maybe thought that there was something wrong, but wasn't really sure. So they did an inspection, maintenance, so they cleaned it out, and basically just tried to figure out exactly what was going on with the system. And so since System B wasn't filed with the health department and nothing was mentioned during the sale of the property when the new owner purchased the property, they did not have a service contract, and so the maintenance that needed to be done hadn't been done. So when the inspection did happen, they immediately discovered that the air pump was not working, which is a vital component to the ATU. So basically without that, the ATU was not functional. So once they found that out, they immediately got another operator out there to fix that air pump. And so there. This is actually just a quick picture of System B of the clean out that was going on. So this kind of gives us an idea of how big the tank is. So this is a 900-gallon tank. It is an ATU, so it does have that funnel in there. So you're kind of just seeing part of the system. But if you look at the bottom there, where that leaf fell in, that's the bottom of the tank. And then on the right, you can see that that's the baffle. So basically the way the baffle works is that the treated water will go through and enter the rest of the system, going to the chlorination and the drainage, whereas the scum will stay on top and not exit the system, and the solids will also stay on the bottom and not exit the system.
So then we move on to section 9. Since this is an ATU, we would fill out the advanced pretreatment section. The nice thing about this tool is you only have to fill out the information about that particular system. So since it is an advanced system, we do fill that out. Since this homeowner did have a contract, it was very easy. She knew right away that they changed the air filter in my air pump the last time they were out, so we knew that that 6-month contract had been followed. Their air pump is also located in their laundry room in the basement, so it's very easy for them to keep an eye on and easy for maintenance to access.
Whereas for System B, it was actually outside underneath that fake rock that was showed before. So that's where the alarm was housed as well as the air pump. And so this is immediately when they did the inspection is when they noticed that the air pump was not working. And so that's exactly why health departments often require people with ATUs to have 6-month contracts with operators so that it doesn't go out and you just have a septic system that's non-operable.
And then it also has a place where you can do your final pre-treatment. So with both systems, they do have chlorinators. For system A, their contractor changes out their tablets. So every 6 months, they check it and they put new ones in.
For system B, the homeowner puts their own tablets in. Basically, they have the same type of system where you just open the port, take out that blue chamber, yep. And then you just put the chlorine tablets in there to interact with that wastewater coming through. And so this is a little bit different. You can see we're in a different part of the yard here. This chlorinator is about 80 feet away from the ATU, and then the drainage pipe is another about 80 feet away from that. So it's quite expansive compared to system A.
And since it is an ATU, System A does have an alarm system, so we would fill out that section on the assessment tool. Theirs is located on the laundry room, in the basement, on the wall, very visible, has a very nice bright sticker so they know exactly who to call if that alarm would ever go off. And so we have that marked on the assessment tool.
And then, as you can see, System B does not have a sticker. You can see where it would go. However, there is no sticker there. So that just kind of goes along with what we've been seeing with System B over and over. The installer clearly didn't follow the right protocols as far as reporting it to the health department and making sure the homeowner knew what to do in case of maintenance needed or an emergency situation.
And then our last part of the tool is, to me, the most important. This is where you get to write down your thoughts. This is where you can put your best practices. This is where you can address anything that you've found that has gone wrong with the system. And so this is a great asset for the homeowner to have, because you can print all this information off and they have something tangible that they can keep in their files and they can reference back. So not only do they have your recommendations, they can then reference back to best practices. They have a nice picture of what the aerial looks like with all of their system components documented on it. And so it's a great resource for them to have in their file to keep them.
Yep, some of this things that we talk about are, don't put certain things down the drain, don't drive over any part of your system. So just being septic smart in general with those recommendations. And so that's all we have for today. So if anyone has any questions, please let us know. I guess there are some questions. Oh, kind of.
Is there a recommendation template for the septic assessment like there is the well assessment? So I'm not sure exactly what RCAP does. Steve's shaking his head no. But I know we're taking feedback. This is in its pilot program. So once we get all that information back, then I'm sure we'll work with RCAP, or RCAP regions will work on getting a template just like they did for the well assessment. Have you received feedback from septic inspectors that have used the assessment tool? We actually have gotten about that much. One of the first things that people said is, it's so long, I don't want to look at it. And so some of the feedback we've got is, just go out and do one. Once you do the first one, you'll realize how easy it is to do the assessments, and it makes it really easy, and you don't have to fill all this information out, so it just looks a little intimidating, but it's really not.
All right, I'm gonna grab that System B alarm one. Was System B alarm functional? If so, I may eat my own hat. So you might have to eat like half a hat. So it was functional. However, there's an alarm on it and a light. The light had died. So the light was no longer working. The alarm was actually set to mute. So when you tested it, it was actually working, and when you turned it on, it was alarming. So technically, you might have to eat a hat on that, but I won't force you.
Do you think this assessment could be adapted into a simplified version that a homeowner could complete themselves? Do you think that there would be value in doing that? The purpose of our tool is for a professional to go out and give advice to a homeowner. A homeowner could definitely take a simplified version and fill it out. We actually did a little training. We had some staff in our office who had never done anything with the septic system. And so we took them out and they were able to fill it out, no problems, a little, tips here and there on what the different components were. So a homeowner could definitely do it, but the point of this assessment is for us to identify those vulnerabilities. And your homeowners aren't going to know those vulnerabilities on their own. They need that professional to come in and explain to them why you can't have a straight pipe that goes into your creek in the back.
Which kind of goes along with the next question: can service inspection by contractor help with filling out the septic assessment tool? I think that would be a great help. Obviously you do want a professional filling out this septic assessment. But if you have a contractor and you call them up and you know that they, have serviced this system, you can definitely ask them questions for this. That would be a great resource, especially if you are in System B's scenario where you just don't have any information based on the permits. I think that would be a great resource to contact them.
So where in the Illinois Private Sewage Code does it state this? I think it's in there in a roundabout way, if I recall correctly. It is, and I did work at a county health department where we had our own ordinance on top of it. But I know it was at a state level meeting that we were talking about it. But it was so many inconsistencies with perk test that they're trying to get it where only a soil classifier is determining where that is. If you want to shoot me an email, I would be more than happy to find it in the code and let you know exactly where it states that, though. And then,
One more question.
what is this tool designed for? Septic contractors versus environmental health professionals. Well, this tool was designed for our RCAP technical assistance providers. So this was part of a grant deliverable is why we developed this tool, but we have made it available to anyone that wants to use it. So it would be a great tool for contractors or EHPs to be able to use on their own to be able to use it to help a homeowner out with their septic system.
You guys made it through all of your questions, and there's a minute left.
Oh,
Yeah.
we rocked
I was gonna say,
We rocked it.
anything else from you guys?
Yeah, any other questions?
They just wanted an extra minute for their break.
Yeah.